All right. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm glad to see we had a good turnout despite the weather. First of all, I want to obviously acknowledge Belmont Hillsborough Neighbors and Hillsborough West End Neighbors for sponsoring this event. Also, I want to thank, and I don't know if anybody's here, any officers are here, but I also want to thank the Metro Nashville Police Department for hosting us and allowing us to use this space. Thank you very much. So, anyway, tonight I'm going to talk about some choices you can make with security cameras. And, you know, people sometimes ask, you know, are you in the business of doing security cameras? No, actually, I don't have any business. I do a totally different thing. I do integrated circuit design. This is just a hobby to me, but like many hobbies, I got into it for a reason. In this case, because like a lot of us, I was victimized. I was a victim of a crime. And that motivated me to do something about it. And in my case, because I'm an electrical engineer, I was able to pull some tricks that the average person can't do. So I want to talk about that. But along the way, I've learned some things that a lot of people can apply. You don't need to be an electrical engineer to do many of the things I'm going to show you how to do. In fact, there's equipment out there and cameras out there that anybody can utilize that it can be really effective in terms of helping to solve crimes and helping to, you know, prevent being a victim. So let's talk about that tonight. We'll talk about some of the choices that you can make when trying to find the right security camera. So, you know, this is one of the first questions I'm always asked by people. What camera should I buy? And I always tell them that's a really loaded question, because that's like saying, who should I marry or what car should I buy? You know, it's a simple question with a very complex answer. So what you want or what you want to get depends upon your budget, your security needs, and of course your technical expertise. So what I want to try to do is provide some information tonight to help you make this decision or answer this question on your own. So, kinds of questions people ask. You know, what are the different types of security cameras that are available? Where can I buy them? How much does it cost to set it up, to purchase and set up the equipment I'm going to need? Are there going to be any ongoing costs, annual or monthly costs? Okay. What specifications should the camera have, depending upon what I'm trying to do with it? And how difficult are they to install? And do I need anything besides the camera, any other equipment besides the camera? So I'm going to try to address all of these questions tonight. So first of all, I want to emphasize that what I'm going to talk about tonight is security cameras, not security systems. I mean, a security system normally means you've got an alarm, you've got sensors on your doors and windows. There are lots of companies that can help you with this. There's equipment you can buy on your own to install your own security system. But what I want to focus on is the camera itself. So, security alarm systems are a big market, but let's focus just on how to put a better video security system into your house. So, what are the options for good high-performance security cameras? Well, when you think about what camera you want to buy, everything comes down to what's the trade-off between cost, ease of use, and quality. And that's true for everything you buy. All right, so everybody's very familiar with these what I call consumer-friendly cameras. We all know about these, Nest, Arlo, Ring, okay? We go out and buy these all the time. So these are very simple and easy to operate and set up, but they're rather limited in capabilities. And I want to try to, hopefully tonight, give you some idea of what are some good choices you can make in that area. And then we've got some much more difficult to set up, a lot more sophisticated, but at the same time, even though they're harder to set up, they are definitely far better performance. You can do some amazing things with those kinds of cameras. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what I've done in my own house here tonight. So, what are the basics of security cameras? So first of all, what does a camera require? Well, first of all, you've got to have some way of storing the video. So either you're going to store it on like a memory card or a network video recorder in your house or a computer hard drive, or you're going to put it in the cloud. Store your video in the cloud, and that's what many people do. You also need a network connection. You've got to be connected either with a wireless or wired connection to the network, to the internet. That enables you to control your cameras and also view your cameras remotely. And you also need electrical power. One way or the other, either it's got to be battery. Very popular thing is to do what's called power over Ethernet, and I'll talk about that tonight. But you need some kind of AC power or battery, but in some cases you can also do solar power. okay, and other things like that. Other things you care about are the specifications for the camera, and one of those is resolution, okay? How detailed is the image? And that's normally specified in millions of pixels. And so typical cameras you can buy today are typically 1 to 8 megapixels, and basically roughly 8 megapixels is kind of equivalent to a 4K TV in terms of the kind of video quality you get. There's also a matter of sensor size, and this is something people don't really appreciate unless you start digging down into the specs. Larger sensors give you better performance. In fact, they give you especially better nighttime performance. And that's really the difference between a decent camera versus a really good camera, is having a larger sensor. So turns out that nowadays some of the best cameras are the 1/2.5 inch and 1/1.8 inch sensors that are available in some higher end cameras. But it turns out those cameras are not as expensive as they used to be. In fact, they've gotten pretty cheap. So as an example, a really good camera, the Dahua IPC T5442TM. That has 4 megapixel resolution. It's a 1/1.8 inch sensor, and I'll show you an example of what that looks like. And it's only $149. So really good cameras, and I mean really good cameras, actually are no more expensive than going out and buying a Ring or a Nest camera quite often. The difference is what other kinds of equipment do you need to have and what kind of installation do you need to make it work. Other things we care about, field of view. In other words, how wide of an image are you trying to capture? So that's normally specified in degrees, and what you'll find is a very wide field of view will capture, for example, your whole yard, okay? But the problem is you don't get a whole lot of detail out of any particular portion of the image. You can also have very narrow fields of view with zoom, and then you can capture, for example, people coming through a driveway or coming through a specific entrance or walking through a doorway. And so that's kind of the trade-off. Do you want more detail versus a wider field? And again, this comes down to choices you can make with the camera itself. So example, here is a camera, one of my earlier cameras. It's 4 megapixel resolution. It was a 1/3 inch sensor. And this had a 3.6 millimeter focal length with an 83-degree field of view. This is one of my earlier cameras. It was not a bad camera, but later on I replaced it because, things bothered me. Wasted pixels. There's nothing to be viewed there on the side of my house. I wanted a better, clear image. So I replaced it with this, which is a 1/1/8 inch sensor. It's got a more narrow field of view with a longer focal length and 8 megapixels of resolution. So this camera was $150. A really good camera. Still using it today. In fact, I'm going to show you an image from it here in just a few minutes. So this gives you an idea of what is available in terms of the camera performance. Now, lens types matter. Do you want to have a fixed lens, okay, with a specific focal length? You can buy certain cameras with different focal lengths. You can also get what's called a varifocal. It's got optical zoom. You can sit here and control it and zoom the camera in and out. Those are a little more expensive, but they give you a lot more options in terms of really putting that camera exactly where you want it to be. There's also a network connection you have to deal with. So, Wi-Fi, of course, is very common. In fact, that's the most common type of camera, probably what most people buy. They'll install a Wi-Fi camera. But the thing of it is you still need to power the camera up. So one of the more popular high-end options is what's called Power over Ethernet, where you're taking an Ethernet camera, you're actually having a wired data connection, but it's also supplying the power to the camera. And that, for example, is what I use for a lot of my cameras, and that's what you'll see in a lot of high-end installations. There's also things like HD over coax. So if you have an old-style camera system that used coax cable, this allows you to actually keep using that without having to run Ethernet cable in your house or in your business. And then finally, you can actually get specialized cameras that have cellular data connections. In fact, I'll talk about one of those right now, which everybody has heard of later on, that actually uses that type of data connection to send out information without using standard Wi-Fi. So, other things. Is it a pan, tilt, zoom camera? Can you actually aim and point the camera? Can you control that? Well, turns out that that's available in a lot of indoor cameras, but it's also available in a lot of high-end outdoor cameras as well. And then things you will see, specifications, the dory numbers. How far away can the camera detect, observe, recognize, or identify individuals? And those numbers, the larger those numbers are, the better the camera is. So some really high-end cameras have excellent dory numbers that literally let you see things that are hundreds or even thousands of feet away. So high resolutions, larger focal lengths give you larger dory values. And weatherproofing. Turns out weatherproofing is actually very standard now in cameras. 10 or 15 years ago, cameras had to be in a special weatherproof enclosure. Nowadays, just about any camera you get is weatherproof by default. That makes installation a whole lot easier. So let's consider some examples of modern security cameras. First of all, just these little indoor, outdoor, fixed view cameras, okay? Ring, for example, Nest cameras. And of course, some of the cameras we're going to talk about tonight, all right? These little Wyze cameras. These are all little fixed view cameras. This one, for example, you can use indoor or outdoor. So the video quality is okay, not great, but the nice thing about these little cameras is they're intended to be very easy to install and very easy to use. And that's really the big appeal to them. If there's one thing that Ring and Nest have done very well, it is they've figured out how to make their cameras very easy to install and very easy to use. Then you've got these more sophisticated indoor pan tilt zoom cameras where you can actually point the camera around. It can look up, down, it can scan. So you can get these from different manufacturers. And this is a good choice for an indoor home security camera because it lets you kind of look around. Okay, you can scan and look at different areas. Then you've got what we call mini bullet cameras, outdoor cameras. And this is kind of more like what people think of when they think about a camera. So in this case, these can be wired or wireless. They come in a whole range of different resolutions and optical choices. They're really very good choice for sort of a wide view, outdoor view. And quite often, if you go and you buy these multi-camera security systems like at Costco, you'll see a lot of these types of cameras bundled together in the system. So then we have the outdoor bullet. These are larger versions of that same type of camera. And quite often, these will have true optical zoom. Here's where you're starting to get to fairly high performance cameras. And we'll look at some of what you can do with those a little later. But in this case, these are typically, you'll find they have really good night vision. They are almost always power over Ethernet, wired connectivity. But, they're an excellent choice for monitoring. In this case, if you want to monitor a very specific area, a door, a walkway, you want to zoom in on your car. This is a really good choice to get really good high-resolution images of some specific area. And typically when you're building good camera systems, you want a bundle of cameras. You want cameras that give you the wide view and some that give you the narrow view. So it's never one size fits all if you really want to cover all of your bases. Then you've also got these dome and turret cameras. These are very popular just because people like the looks of them. They don't look quite as ugly and as obtrusive as a bullet camera. So in this case, you'll see quite often people have these little cameras under the eaves of their house or something like that. And these actually can give you very good performance as well. And there are some excellent cameras you can get, for example, in what's called the turret format like this that I would personally recommend. Then if you really want to get serious, you've got these very large scale pan tilt zoom cameras about this big. And those cameras, as I always tell people, I could take my camera and I could watch a cockroach crawling up the steps of my neighbor across the street if I wanted to do that. That's how good those cameras are. But normally what I usually use it for is to look at my car to make sure nobody comes along and tries to get into my car. Now, the really high-end models, you can use those for surveillance from literally hundreds of feet away. And nowadays, you've got cameras like this that will actually track people. So if someone is walking down the street late at night, the camera will track the human figure. And so that's actually one of my new projects, is to install a camera that has that type of auto tracking so that, if someone comes on late at night and starts to mess with my car, I want to be able to see them going up and down the street as they walk towards my vehicle and walk away. It's actually not that difficult to do anymore. So let's talk about recording and storing video. So you've got a nice camera, you're recording video. Where does the video go? Well, One of the most obvious ways people store video is in the cloud. You pay somebody to do it for you. You pay Ring, you pay Nest. They record your video. There's no local storage of your video at all. And, you know, the problem with that, of course, is, first of all, you got to pay for it. Secondly, it's all totally dependent on your internet. If your network goes down, you've got Wi-Fi cameras, the camera is useless. Nothing gets recorded. So that's a real issue with them. Also, they typically only do what we call motion detection events. So in other words, they'll only record when some motion is detected in the field of view, and only for a short clip. And how many times have we seen people with a recording of a Ring camera where they see the back of the guy walking away from the camera because the camera didn't start recording early enough? So the motion detection has its limits. The other issue, of course, with recorded video in the cloud is privacy concerns. You're putting these images on somebody else's computer server. Is there a security concern? Is there a privacy concern? Well, people are worried about that at times. Now, other ways to record memory. If you're not going to put it in the cloud, you need to do local storage. One of the ways is an SD card. SD cards are incredibly cheap nowadays. People don't really realize how cheap memory has gotten. You can get a 256 gigabyte SD card for literally $30. And that record weeks of video for a camera, continuous time. So really, the cost of memory is not really an issue anymore for recordings and for security systems. You can also, of course, get a NVR, a network video recorder. And basically, all these cameras will record onto that thing. It's basically just, it's a hard drive. It's just a video recorder that's handling all those feeds at once. So this is the kind of thing, if you hire a security system, a company to come in to put in a security system, this is normally what they'll put in your house. They will give you some type of network video recorder. Now, the nice thing, of course, is no monthly fees required. That's the good thing. Because now you're doing local storage. You're not having to pay Ring or Nest or anybody else in order to store your video. It's all yours. It's all secure on your own system. Then you can record video on a computer. So you can take a PC or a Mac, and there is software, Blue Iris or Security Spy, very popular software, which enables you to turn your computer into a network video recorder, and then you actually store everything on your hard drive. And it gives you a lot of capabilities. I personally use Security Spy. I love it. It's a tremendous piece of software. It enables me to do all kinds of neat tricks with my camera system. So this enables you to take, for example, a 4 terabyte drive, which you can buy for about $85 on Amazon, and store weeks of video on that drive. So, you know, if you've got a computer, a dedicated computer you're willing to use in a security system, and you're not afraid to learn a little bit about computers, this is a really good solution, and we'll talk a little more about that. Then if you are a true IT professional, you can do what's called network attached storage. This is a great solution for businesses. If you have got a lot of security cameras in your business, and you're afraid of somebody breaking in and stealing your cameras and stealing your security system in order to, you know, destroy the video, you can have a network attached storage unit, which is going to be in a closet somewhere, and all the video gets stored on that. It's a remote hard drive is what it is. So lots of different options for personal storage versus cloud storage. So what about the right camera system? Kind of looked at all these different options. Okay, now when you start thinking about security camera systems, I'm going to kind of go down this list. We're going to go from what's really easy to use, but not necessarily very capable, down to stuff that's harder to use, but is very capable. And so I want to kind of go through all these different things you can do, all these choices you can make if you want to put in a system. Now first, let's look at a professional security package. In other words, let's get Comcast or AT&T or ADT to install your cameras for you. So in this case, it's part of their whole security package. They'll add in the cameras. Now, the advantage of this is they do everything for you, but the problem is it's one size fits all. They'll typically have 1 or 2 types of cameras, and they use them for everything. You know, not in my opinion, not particularly good cameras, but on the other hand, if you don't want to have to mess with it or have any kind of hassle with your system, they'll take care of it. So they'll maintain everything for you, but the problem, of course, is It's expensive. You're paying monthly fees. You may have a service contract. I mean, basically, you're dealing with your cable company or for your cellular company, right? That's what you're dealing with. And you can't really integrate anything into their system, no third-party equipment. You have to deal with what they offer you. But it's a total no-brainer if you want to have anything to do with the actual technical installation yourself. Let them do it. Well, then we move down to what a lot of people do nowadays, cloud-based systems, cloud-based cameras. So this is the stuff we're all familiar with. Ring, Nest, okay, Wyze, several others. So very popular. Do-it-yourself installations, okay. Everybody goes to the Home Depot, goes to Walmart, buys one of these cameras, comes home and installs it. So like I said, if one thing Amazon and Google have done very well with these cameras is they've done a great job of selling them to people, and they've done a great job of convincing people to put them in, and they make it very easy to install them. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're always a good choice. All right? Doorbells, the Ring doorbells, Nest doorbells, everybody's got video doorbells. These are a good choice too. I personally like to have a video doorbell, but a video doorbell is not the only camera I've got. A video doorbell is one piece of a much more comprehensive camera system. So, believe me, I always tell people a video doorbell is a great doorbell. That doesn't mean it's a great camera. So not that I'm trying to say you shouldn't get a video doorbell or one of these types of doorbells, but you should have some other type of video equipment to go with it, some better cameras to go with it. Now, the advantages of these, once again, easy to install and configure. You can share the clips. Quite often they integrate these with Alexa and things like that, so you can actually, integrate them into your home automation. They make them very, very easy to use. And in some cases, they now are starting to incorporate human figure and face detection, and we'll talk a little more about that. So in many ways, they've got some great features. The disadvantages is you have only a limited camera selection. You've really got to pay to use them, some monthly or annual fees, and that's really, when you're in the Ring or the Nest or the Arlo ecosystem, so to speak, you are going to be paying for that. The other thing too is these cameras only work with the system, only with the network or the cloud system of the manufacturer. So, really if the servers don't become accessible, your cameras just become paperweights. If the company ever goes out of business, your cameras are paperweights. If you lose your internet, your cameras are paperweights. The nice thing, one of the reasons why I always tell people, get a Ring or a Nest is because I don't really think Amazon or Google are going to go out of business anytime soon. All right, your home Wi-Fi has got to work. If it doesn't work, these cameras are not going to work for you. Now there is a camera that you can get, a budget camera that I really recommend, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this. The WiseCam version 3, and these are the cameras we're going to be giving away tonight. This can be purchased for $36 on Amazon Prime. This is a weatherproof camera. It's got a wide-angle 2 megapixel resolution. It sends motion detection alerts to your smartphone. It uses the Amazon Cloud service to record motion clips if you want, but the nice thing about these cameras is you can install an SD card and you can have your own 24/7 video recording, which does not require connection to the internet. This camera, if you lose the internet, this camera will keep right on recording onto that SD card. And they can be set up in just a matter of minutes. So, for example, here's one that I have installed outside one of my house with one of my several cameras. This took me just a few minutes to set up. Here is a daytime image. Here's a nighttime image. This is a dark street. That's a color image. These cameras have amazing little sensors. They require very little light to give you a color image. So these are really good little cameras, and they now have a WiseCam V3 Pro, which is even a step up from this. They work extremely well for the cost. I mean, $36 plus a memory card. Memory card's less than $10. So for less than $50, you can have a really nice camera. Very, very good camera that records continuously for you. Now, you can also detect human figures, automobiles, pets, package deliveries. That does require an annual subscription of $20, but it's not required to do that, just for the basic recording and motion alert features. You don't need that. You don't need to pay anything. Of course, you have to set this up on your smartphone, and also, like all other systems, their cameras only work with their own ecosystem. If Wyze ever goes out of business, just like everybody else, the cameras become paperweights. But at the price, they work incredibly well. So I'm a big fan of these cameras. All right, and Wyze, of course, like most other companies, is getting into a lot more of the smart home market. So you see a lot of this where lots more companies, Arlo, Eufy, many more companies are getting into this space to sell you security systems, to sell you security cameras, to sell you security services. And you'll see more and more companies doing this. They want to sell you the entire package. The camera is just a part of it. Next we go to camera systems with network video recorders. That's the next step of complexity. This is the kind of thing that if you hire a company to come in and put in security cameras in your home and they're going to run wiring, this is what they're normally going to install. They'll install a series of cameras around the outside of your house that will connect into a network video recorder, and you'll be able to actually view the images on your smartphone so you can remotely see what's going on at your house. So these are really nice systems. There's a little bit of a learning curve to learn how to use the NVR. And generally, these are going to be hardwired. They're going to require Ethernet connection. So either you have to do that installation yourself to run the wiring or hire somebody to do it for you. But there's a lot of advantages to having that wired versus wireless connection, in my opinion. Okay? Once again, if your network goes down, these cameras keep working. So you can bundle these together add cameras to these systems. They work great. So again, you can lose your internet, but they'll keep recording. Later on, your internet comes back, you'll be able to see what happened. So you don't need that direct connection. You don't need to pay anything. And really, some of these cameras you can buy now, some of the higher end cameras are becoming extremely sophisticated. So for example, you can now buy cameras that will detect people's faces. You can buy cameras that will count the number of people going in and out of a door. You see a lot of businesses now who are using these types of cameras, who are installing these because it gives us an idea of traffic, foot traffic, and whether people are on the property. Now, you can buy systems like this in a lot of places. You can go down to Costco right now and buy a system like this at Costco. They sell several systems like this. So companies like Lorex and Amcrest sell these. If you're going to buy a system like this, make sure you read reviews. Make sure you spend your money wisely because performance can vary widely. But in general, Lorex, I think, makes a pretty decent camera system. Amcrest makes a pretty good camera system. We'll talk a little more about those. These are good choices. Finally, we get to the most sophisticated version, and that is kind of roll your own. In other words, have a security software that runs on a dedicated computer and connect everything to that dedicated computer. So in this case, you've got a computer, in this case a Mac, running Security Spy. The beauty of this is you can have any type of camera, a wide range of different cameras from different manufacturers, different types. You can integrate them all together. So you're not stuck with one particular manufacturer or one brand. You can mix and match cameras to your needs. So in my case, I am taking an iMac that's running at home. I've got 20 cameras connected to that iMac, running into an array of disks, okay? I'm serious about these things, right? So I'm running into 16 terabytes of disk space. I've got high resolution, constant recording around my home, and I have basically 3 weeks of basically 3 weeks of video that's stored on this system. So that's what you can really do if you want to get really sophisticated. You can literally support hundreds of cameras on one of these types of systems. That's where modern technology has brought us now in terms of bandwidth and in terms of speed. Okay? Now, you need to, of course, the computer becomes basically a high-end digital video recorder. But now you can use the power of the computer where you can actually now control the interface and do a lot of neat tricks with these types of programs. Now, the costs are somewhat higher, but the thing of it is if you really want to have a best-of-breed system, okay, they're more difficult to set up, there's more of a learning curve, but if you really want a system that is absolutely unequaled, then this is what you want to do. You really want to kind of set up your own system. And Blue Iris and Security Spy are really popular, very well known in the design space, and what really a lot of very serious prosumers will use. Now, another nice thing about it is when you look at Security Spy or Blue Iris, you can get some very nice configurable high-performance cameras. Dahua, Hikvision, Amcrest, they all sell cameras that have an interface that allows you to go through and control just about every aspect of that camera's operation through that web interface. So you can go and you can use these cameras as standalone cameras. They can record directly their own internal memory if you want to. You can connect them to a cloud service. You can actually configure them to send you to your cell phone or your email images when people come onto your property. But of course you can also connect them directly to Blue Iris or Security Spy running on a PC or a Mac. And so these types of cameras, these really high-end cameras, work very well with this software, with Blue Iris or Security Spy, with this standalone PC or Mac concept. So, guidelines, recommendations. First of all, here's the next question people ask. What cameras do you recommend after they ask me what security camera to buy? Well, here are my recommendations. First of all, if you want to get a cloud camera, get a Wyze. And there's one reason why I tell you to do that, because you can record continuous video without paying a subscription fee. One thing that really frustrates me about Ring and Nest cameras is a 32 gig memory card would cost them less than $10 to put into a Ring or a Nest camera. But that's not their business model. Their business model is to sell you a subscription and store the video in the cloud. And so, in my opinion, those cameras are deliberately crippled for no other reason than because Google and Amazon have a business model to make you pay for each camera. I personally am not a big fan of that. I am a real fan of having a camera that will record continuously where you don't have to pay a subscription fee. And Wyze is a great camera for that. If you want a more high-end camera, I use Dahua cameras. So Dahua has an incredible variety of high-performance cameras, all the way from very cheap, simple cameras to very expensive high-performance cameras. And you can basically find a camera for just about any need or any application you want. But these are all manufactured in China. Dahua offers no US support. And if you try to buy these from Chinese vendors, buyer beware, okay? There are companies like BH Photo Video. Also on Amazon, you can normally get a good camera that's not going to be gray market, but you got to be careful about what you buy. But get the right kind of camera, they're great cameras. This is my go-to camera brand. I use this, most of my cameras are Dahua cameras. However, I also have some Amcrest cameras. Amcrest actually is rebranded Dahua. Amcrest takes Dahua cameras, puts their own name on it, and they resell them here in the US. And the reason why some people might want an Amcrest camera is if they want US-based support. Dahua will not support their cameras. You just buy them and they're done with you. But Amcrest will actually give you support here in the US. Okay, in fact, Amcrest actually has their own cloud system. So you can actually take some of their high-end cameras and basically record your video in the Amcrest cloud if you want to do that. You don't need to. But they actually have that option where you can actually configure the cloud function in the camera itself. So they're pretty versatile cameras in terms of the options you have. I should also add, of course, they have an SD card and they can actually record video locally. So the camera itself can operate standalone and record video even if it's not connected to a network video recorder. Now, if price is not an object, if you want the absolute best of breed, there are companies out there that will be more than happy to sell you some extremely high-end systems. You see a lot of these used in businesses, schools, government offices, things like that. But also some people have high-end systems they purchase for themselves. And these systems can be literally configured to have hundreds of cameras if you need them. These companies provide really good support, really good service, but you're definitely going to pay for it. But if you have the money and if your time is more valuable than your money, this may be a really good choice and you want a really good camera. So for example, Verkada, okay? They take care of everything for you. They maintain, they upgrade the cameras, they give you all kinds of high performance stuff like, for example, identifying people by face recognition, okay? This person came into your business and stole something. This person just came back in the door again, send you a warning. That's the kind of performance you can get out of them, okay? You've got a school system, you've got a school building, you have Verkada cameras set up. somebody has come into the school before who didn't belong there. You set up an alert. If this person comes back in, let me know. That's the kind of functionality you have. So very capable, very expensive, but also you've got to pay for them. And in this case, you're paying annual fees, very expensive annual fees. You're more renting the camera than buying it. Then you can also buy some cameras for really kind of interesting remote type applications. So for example, if you need a camera that's out in the middle of nowhere, but it's got to work, you can have a solar panel combined with a camera that connects to the cell service, to a cell service, LTE cell service. So they've always, if you're out in the middle of nowhere without any kind of power or data connectivity, there's still options if you're willing to pay for it. So where do you begin? Well, first of all, and I want to emphasize this, any camera is better than no security camera at all. I don't care what security camera you've got. I have my personal favorites, but I'll tell everybody, if you have nothing but a Ring doorbell, that's better than nothing. All right? I mean, there are other things you can do, but even one camera operating is better than no camera at all. It tells you things, okay? When did the crime take place? How many people were involved? Were there vehicles involved? It tells you things that will enable you to inform your neighbors about what happened, inform the police about what happened. So it's always better to have some information rather than be completely ignorant of what went on, what kind of crime occurred. I mean, I always see this on Nextdoor. Gee, somebody broke into my car. Did anybody record that on their cameras? It's like, no, you should be recording it on your own cameras, not relying on your own neighbors. You should put that camera yourself. So I always tell people, if in doubt, start with one camera, and then later on, try it out, and if you like it, you can expand your system. So one inexpensive camera can kind of start you on the path of getting a better system. And I think, for example, the Wyze is a perfect camera for doing stuff like that. Okay, before you install the camera, make sure you can use it. All right, you have the right to record video of public areas around your home. That's been established for a long time. There's no real expectation of privacy if you're walking down a street here in the U.S. Someone can record you if you're walking in front of their house. You can record that. But make sure if you're recording the neighbor's property, okay, make sure that you're not, for example, looking in their bedroom window. Okay, there's an expectation of privacy in situations like that. There's no expectation of privacy of a person walking in their front lawn. Anybody can see that. So you want to make sure that you are not violating any kinds of laws by pointing cameras where they shouldn't be pointed. Now, if you are renting or leasing and you want to install a camera, obviously you want to ask your landlord. Another thing, of course, is that a lot of HOAs prohibit the installation of cameras. So homeowners associations say no visible external cameras at all, which I think is kind of short-sighted, but some people have to deal with that. And if you're a landlord and you have a short-term rental and you want to install cameras, of course, once again, consult a lawyer. Talk to a lawyer before you start putting cameras inside the house. So people have an expectation of privacy. Now, audio may be problematic. You can record video. Normally, I don't try to record audio because that actually runs afoul of wiretapping laws in a lot of states. But video is normally not an issue. Now, Wyze, Ring, Nest, Arlo, those little simple cloud cameras, they're good for, you've got a small condo or small apartment with just a couple of entrances in and out of the house or the apartment, then just those simple little cloud cameras can work really well. They can be integrated with things like the Amazon Echo, and you can control them remotely and see the image on your TV. So, those are not bad choices if you're in a small living area. Keep in mind that if you're going to install any type of cloud camera, if you're getting a battery-powered camera, be sure you're willing to change those batteries often and check them often. Now, if you've got a larger home, then an NVR with a multi-camera system, I think, is a good choice, because then you can cover basically every single direction around your home. So you can get some really good bundled systems, for example, from Amcrest for about $1,000 to $1,500. Not counting installation costs. So if you really want to do better than just an average little small Ring or Wyze or something like that, then the next step up is to actually start having some dedicated, hardwired, power over Ethernet cameras. And if you're most knowledgeable, as we said before, do it yourself. Security Spy, Blue Iris. In this case, you can combine a whole array of different cameras, varifocal, fixed focus, cameras for different applications, and combine them all and run them through that same system. And of course, the drawback is you have to learn how to optimize and use the system yourself. So there's certainly a learning curve to it, but in my opinion, it's worth it in terms of what you can get out of it. And finally, if your time is limited and cost is not an option, pay somebody to do it for you. There are several companies that will install complete security systems in your home. I personally would advise you to do a little bit of research and tell the security company what types of cameras you want installed, because otherwise they just want to come in and do a one-size-fits-all camera. Most of them do. You have to specifically tell them, I want a camera that does this for this particular area of my house. So be specific. Speak up about what you want. Other recommendations, don't try to record through a window. Cameras that are weatherproof are very cheap and easy to get nowadays. It's very easy to mount them outside. You're not going to get good results recording through a window at night. You get reflections. So don't try to do it. Don't install the cameras too high. Some people put cameras in like in a roof. And of course, they'll just see the person's head walking up who steals their package and walks away. Not very useful. You want to see their face. It needs to be low enough. But PoE, Power over Ethernet, wired. I always tell people, if you're going to put in a system, a good system, you want to avoid Wi-Fi. It avoids interference. You get better speed. You don't have to worry about interference from neighbors' Wi-Fi systems affecting your cameras. And since typically most Wi-Fi cameras do need AC wiring, power wiring, why not go ahead and just run Ethernet cable? So I always tell people, if you're really serious about putting in a good camera, spend the extra money. Go PoE. Do wireless. Do the data and the power on a single wire. You'll be very happy you did it. And this is something too. If you're renovating your house or you're building a home, this is an afterthought with so many people. They don't put in Ethernet wiring in their home. I always tell people, if you're running electrical wiring, you're running coax cable, run Ethernet at the same time, because this gives you the ability later on to add cameras or to add a more sophisticated security system if you want to. Now, if you have got security lights, motion detecting security lights outside your home, there are lots of options I can really recommend. You can go and you can actually replace those security lights with a camera with a security light. These are basically drop-in. These are kind of no-brainers. So as long as you have a good network connection, you can put these in and you can get some good performance and the lights are nice and bright and you can at least record what's going on. Now, when you put in cameras, I always tell people, don't just assume the guys are going to come in through your front or your back porch. You want to cover everything around your house, side of your house, the streets in front of your house, the alleyway behind your house. Put in more cameras. Get wider coverage, multiple cameras. Okay? And of course, and I said this before, buy cameras that can record continuous video, not just motion detection. Too often, motion detection is either too sensitive or not sensitive enough. So either you get constant alerts and it drives you crazy and you turn off the camera, or you miss important events. Oh, somebody broke into my car, my camera didn't record anything. Continuous time recording takes care of that for you. No matter if you get a motion alert or not, you can go back and you can see what happened. And you can see what happened 10 minutes before the criminal struck and 10 minutes after they left. Did they come by in a car? Were they with friends? Those are the kinds of things that become really valuable to you. So, timestamps you can configure in the corner of the camera. That's always a good thing. Make sure you have a timestamp so it's evidence in court. And finally, 32 gigabyte memory card. It costs you $10. Memory is cheap. It's incredibly cheap. So you really want to pay for that continuous time recording. Now, another thing I always tell people, resolution isn't everything. Lots of people will say, oh, well, 8 megapixels is better than 4 megapixels, better than 2 megapixels. Well, it depends upon how much zoom you're doing on the image. Here is an 8 megapixel image of the front of my house. But that's not nearly as useful as that 2 megapixel image, which shows very clearly the guy who tried to break into my car, who incidentally I went to court about, okay? So anyway, that's another story. But anyway, if a door checker comes down my street, I want this zoomed in image. This is a 2 megapixel image, but because it's zoomed, it's really a much better image for the purpose, which is to monitor my car. So don't fall into the numbers thing of trying to chase bigger numbers. That's not necessarily the best choice for a camera. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about license plate capture and license plate recognition, because we hear a lot about that in the news. Okay, there's actually a fairly cheap camera you can get for about $250 made by Dahua, which is very much the go-to camera for what we call license plate capture. It is a camera that can actually record the license plate of a vehicle driving by day or night, going by your house. Now, you need two cameras because you want to record cars going in both directions by your home, and you want to set those up. Normally, you want to set these up so that they are running through a network video recorder, okay? You don't want to try to do this with a memory card. The big issue, of course, is good placement, okay? You got to place those cameras in such a way they don't get blocked by trees or other vehicles. But if you set them up right, you can go and you can answer the question the police always ask the first time. Did you get the license plate? So you're a victim. Okay, here's the license plate, officer. Many times since I installed my cameras, I've been able to tell the police, here's the license plate. It makes a difference. So you can get just a camera that can just record the plates, nothing else. And it's worth installing, in my opinion, if you're willing to go to that extra effort. Now, LPC cameras require certain configuration. You need high frame rates, you need fast shutter speeds, but they can record plates very, very nicely. And I'll show you an example later on. And they also can record them at nighttime as well as daytime. Now, if you live on a street where maybe 50 cars go by a day, you don't need anything more expensive or more functional than just a license plate capture. Just record the plates. So you can always go back later on and see which plates went by your house just by reviewing the video. But if you're in a place where thousands of plates go by every day, then you want to go to what's the next step, license plate recognition, where you now put a computer to read those plates for you. So this is a big thing that cities use all over Tennessee, in fact, all over the entire country. The idea of using a hot list. You have a camera, it is connected to a central server that is checking a list of stolen plates, plates for wanted vehicles. And every time a plate goes by, it reads that plate and then checks it against the hot list. And if it turns out that's a stolen car, the police are instantly notified. And they know, go and check that area where that camera just got that hit, and you're going to find that stolen vehicle driving around. I'm a big fan of using these things. I've got my own LPR cameras. We'll talk about that in a moment. Metro City Council has approved an LPR pilot program. Hopefully we're going to see that installed this year. Most of the cities here in Tennessee already have LPR cameras installed, and I'd really like to see Nashville join that right now because Nashville is really a mecca for stolen vehicles. You know, you can steal a vehicle here in Nashville and drive it for weeks and not be caught because police have no way to know where those vehicles are unless they happen to run across one. So LPR system would make a big difference, and I'm looking forward to us having it installed. LPR cameras are in the news. Hendersonville, Belmead, they've had a system for years. Mount Juliet, you constantly see news stories about the camera systems that they're using in those cities. Now, there's another one, interesting one. This is me. This happened, okay, these guys stole the catalytic converter of my neighbor across the street. I recorded them doing it one night. I recorded their license plate, and as we later on found out, they were actually living in Kentucky. They were driving down to steal catalytic converters. Well, anyway, I put their license back in my system because I can put in an alert. If this plate ever comes by again, let me know. And weeks later, I get an alert on my phone, and I check my camera system, and I see that same vehicle driving by, this old beat-up Chevy Suburban. Called the police. Officer came over 10 minutes later. He looked at the video. He went out that night. He caught the guys that night. So these two guys who have probably stolen hundreds of catalytic converters here in the U.S. And in fact, I'm going to be going into court on December 14th, okay, for the trial of these guys. Let's hope they show up and don't skip bail. We'll find out. But I did this with an LPR camera, my own LPR system. So, you know, how do you do your own LPR camera system? Well, it turns out it's not difficult at all. There's software you can buy called Recourse Scout that you run on a computer. And this goes and it takes the feed from your cameras and will record the plates of all the vehicles that go by your house. So $8 per month per camera. it's really kind of a bargain if you want that kind of functionality. It stores 5 days worth of plates on your system. So it gives you a searchable list. You get alerts on your phone. It works great. In fact, if you want to do your own LPR system, it's not that expensive. Do an LPR system. You got to have some technical expertise. But if you set it up right, you can also have your own personal system plus $16 a month to run 2 cameras. Now, if you don't want to pay for it yourself, there's a company out there that will do it for you. Flock Safety. We've all heard about Flock Safety, okay? Flock Safety installs camera systems for neighborhoods and for businesses. They also install a lot of cameras for cities as well. So, for example, I think Hendersonville has got Flock Safety cameras. A couple other cities, other municipalities in Tennessee have got them as well. Georgia uses them all over the entire state. So Flock Safety is a huge vendor in LPR cameras. And the nice thing about them is they take care of everything for you. So they go through, they handle the maintenance, the installation. The camera communicates by LTE, cellular networks. It's solar powered, you do nothing. The only problem is they cost about $2,000 to $2,500 per camera per month. They're not cheap. But you know, if you live in a neighborhood, per year, pardon me. But if you live in a neighborhood where there are lots of homes and there are a couple of entrances coming in and out of the neighborhood, you can split the cost among the different neighbors. And it's not that expensive to have a Flock Safety system. Lots of neighborhoods have done it. Several here in Nashville have got these installed. So this is a popular option. It's not something you pay for yourself personally. It's too expensive, but from a large group of people living together, it can be a good choice for you. Let's talk about human figure recognition. Yes? Yes?
Before we move off of LPRs, I want to say, or ask a question and say one thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First, when a camera is taking these pictures of these license plates, it's only taking a picture of the license plate.
Only the plate.
Automatically tell you who that car belongs to, right?
Tells you nothing, yeah, just the plate.
If you were to report it to police, do they automatically tell you who that car
Never.
belongs to?
Never.
So just the license.
Just the plate.
Police have a reason to look up the number.
It is no different than me standing by the side of the road and writing down the plate as it drives by me. That's all it is. It does not focus on the car or the person driving the car or anything else. It's just the plate.
Second thing, earlier this year council passed fairly narrowly a pilot program to use LPR cameras for a very limited purpose. I know that like Amber Alerts and stolen vehicles and I think felons that there are warrants out on. And they brought to us, not like any speeding or any, like the state doesn't let us in most cases do it for traffic violations, but like somebody that's like going way over the speed limit and driving recklessly and dangerously, I think that's also an item. So that we passed that pilot months ago, I think February, March maybe, but a week from today, the resolution that allows for the police department to purchase a limited number of LPR cameras and use them for a 6-month pilot is up for a vote, Tuesday, December 6th. It also comes with a public hearing. The meeting starts at 6:30. You can let council people know by tom.patch@nashville.gov. Email all council members at nashville.gov. I'm sure we always love to hear from y'all, your thoughts about it. At this point, it's a pilot program, 6 months. We would have to take another vote to continue it after reviewing things. I just wanted to share those two things.
Yeah, thank you for the update. I want to say thank you, Tom. I want to say also, I'm a huge supporter of putting these cameras in. They fight crime, okay? People worry about the abuse, okay? Guys, if you're worried about being tracked, what are you doing carrying a cell phone in your pocket? Seriously. There are people in jail right now because of the information they got off a person's cell phone, tracking that through the cell system. So believe me, no one's going to track you, but what they will identify is if there's a stolen car, the police will know where to get that car. And that is really the advantage of those cameras. I'm a big supporter. I mean, from my own personal experience. But anyway, thanks, Tom. Looking forward to having those cameras installed and tried. I think people are going to really like the results, especially those of you who've had your cars stolen, right? So, human figure recognition, I want to quickly mention that human figure recognition has gotten incredibly cheap. And this is the nice thing. Guys, the criminals can put masks on, and you see nowadays when a lot of these guys are door checking, they're wearing masks, they're wearing gloves, they're wearing hoodies, okay? No camera is going to be able to record their face. But you know one thing, at least you can have a camera that will warn you there's somebody out there. Because you can't hide your personal body, you can't hide the figure. Turns out that even like a nice little WiseCam V3, this little thing right here, this camera here has built-in human figure recognition. I wanted to do a demo, but unfortunately the network here wouldn't cooperate. But I can set this little camera up so that I can point it at my porch or next to my car, and I can configure it so that if someone comes along between like midnight and 5 a.m. and they're next to my car or they're on my front porch, light goes on and a siren goes on. Okay? Believe me, lights and cameras don't necessarily scare these guys, but when they hear an alarm, they take off running. And the camera itself, its alarm isn't that loud, but the camera itself can trigger larger, louder alarms and bigger lights if you want to do that. So buying some additional Wise smart switches, you can turn this into a very effective system. So I always tell people that this is one way to deter people, door checkers and people coming in onto your property late at night. Define an area with the camera and set the alert so if a human figure is there at a time, you know, at 3 in the morning, no one has any business being on my porch. I want that alarm to go off and make that person run off. That kind of thing is easy to set up, very easy to do. So think about that if you are having issues where you're worried about people coming on your property or messing with stuff very late at night. A loud alarm set off by a camera can be enough to make them run. So something to consider. All right, what does the future hold? Well, where are we going to go? Well, first of all, we've been having better optics, better performing cameras at lower price. That trend is obviously going to continue. I think one of the big things coming up next is face tracking and facial recognition. There's a lot of people saying, oh, face recognition is terrible. There are laws being passed to keep governments from using face recognition. But you know, facial recognition is just software. And it's not going to matter to people who buy private cameras and install that software themselves. That's going to be irrelevant to them. You can prohibit the government from doing it, but individuals will certainly be able to use that kind of equipment. You're also going to see, I think, networked neighborhood cameras. What that means is you're going to combine your cameras with your neighbors and put into a single system where, in effect, you multiply their power because those cameras can help you track what's going on in your neighborhood late at night. So when the door checkers come through your neighborhood, you start getting multiple alerts from different people's cameras, and you know something is going on because all these alerts are going off. So, you know, imagine a scenario where somebody who's been stealing in your neighborhood comes by again late at night, and then you get an alert that goes to everybody in the neighborhood because they're all networked together. Not only that, but you can get that alert immediately to the police. And you can share that video feed with the police. I think that's a future we're heading towards because people want to use that technology to enable the police to do their job better. And people are fed up with package theft, door checking, and these kinds of petty property crimes. I think we're going to see more of this. Then there's this.
Does it fire a missile at you?
If only. You can buy this right now. Okay. Ring only is selling a certain limited number, but you can get on the list to buy one. Okay. So it's a flying drone with a camera that flies around inside your house. It may not work well if you've got a cat. Okay. But that's what you have, and that's kind of the future. We're going to start putting these cameras on drones. In fact, you know, we're going to see this more and more. You know, the police are going to get to a point one day where they're not going to bother with pursuits at all. The moment somebody in a car takes off, they're going to launch a drone. And that drone is going to follow that car until the people in that car have to stop, and then the police will converge. So we're going to see the end of high-speed pursuits because we're going to be going to high-performance surveillance drones with cameras monitoring our streets that are going to be run by the police and municipal government. That is the direction we're heading in. But you'll also have these same kind of things at your own home. So a few final recommendations. First of all, lots of good places to buy security cameras. Amazon, I think, is a good source, okay? Obviously, Home Depot and Lowe's, they carry Ring and Nest cameras, good place to buy them. BH Photo Video, good online vendor. AliExpress sells cameras directly from China, but once again, buyer beware. Make sure you get it from a trusted seller. And lots of different brands, lots of manufacturers. Do your homework. Make sure you're buying what you want. Okay, ipcamtalk.com. That's a great website if you want to learn more about cameras. If you want to be a do-it-yourselfer and really learn how to do good cameras, that's the first place to go. And really, no security camera is a substitute for good security practices. Get an alarm system. Participate in a neighborhood watch. Talk to your neighbors. Get to know your neighbors. These are just kind of common sense things. So, call the police, report suspicious incidents. Those are the kinds of things that really make your neighborhood more secure, not just putting up a camera alone. And also, check your camera feeds from time to time. Make sure your cameras are still working. Some people put in a camera and totally ignore it for weeks at a time, suddenly realize, oh, the batteries ran down. I didn't get any video. So make sure you check that. So in closing, I want to talk about one of the incidents that made me really happy I had a camera, my security cameras that I put up. I first put in my LPR cameras because somebody sideswiped my car and drove off. And I was determined that if it ever happened again, I would record the license plate of the person who did that. But it turned out sometime after my camera served a more important purpose. Somebody posted on Nextdoor that her daughter was in her car, and some guy tried to break into the car that her teenage daughter, was sitting in. She screamed bloody murder. The guy jumped in the car, drove off. They had a general description of the vehicle, and they knew approximately what time it happened. The daughter was very traumatized by this. The mother was in the house while the daughter was waiting out in the car. Well, it turns out they were right down the street from me. And I said, hey, when did this happen? Because I was thinking there are only two entrances in the alley where that guy tried to get into the car. And my cameras can see one of those alley entrances. So I went and I checked one of my cameras. So there's the alleyway here. And what do you know? Here's this car driving and turning up that alley. Right about the time and same general appearance. And there was a license plate because my cameras recorded that plate. And then I checked with my neighbor across the street who had other cameras. And sure enough, he was able, with his camera looking down the street, he could see where the guy got out of his car and walked over to the car that girl was in. Then he jumped in and then drove back out, and there was that same car. So I contacted the police. That car was stolen. It had been stolen weeks before. And here was the weird part. That guy had been driving his car by my house for weeks. It's like he owned it. He had no fear of that car being caught in that stolen car. He was a wanted felon who had a very long rap sheet and was wanted for sexual assault. All right? And teenage daughter, for some reason, he tried to get into that car. He got scared and drove off, but the police really wanted him. So I set up an alert in my system. And you know what? About half an hour after I set up the alert, that guy came driving by my house again. I emailed the police. The lieutenant I was talking to jumped in his car. He said it was the first time in years he had been in an actual pursuit. So he chased this guy. The guy bailed on the vehicle. He bailed and took off. They didn't catch the guy, but he got out of the car so quickly he left behind evidence of who he was. And they found out he was this wanted felon. Later on, they caught him. The girl actually testified against him at the trial, and he went away for several years. But my cameras caught what was very, very obviously a sexual predator who was after a young girl. I'm very glad of that. That's why I'm very happy I got these cameras. That made a difference. So cameras like this are not the sort of thing you need all the time, but there are times when you're really, really glad you had them. Okay? So, questions?
I have a question.
Yes?
What is the likelihood or risk of being hacked? Any use?
with cloud cameras, it all comes down to whether or not you have a good password and you use two-factor authentication. So what I will always tell people, if you get like a Ring or a Nest or a Wyze camera, enable two-factor authentication. Just about everybody who gets hacked had a weak password and did not use two-factor authentication, and that's why it happened. I think in general the cameras are fairly safe. Certainly companies like Arlo and Nest and Ring and Wyze care very much about having a secure platform, and they will do security patches. I really don't feel it's a concern as long as you have a strong password. Not a serious concern. Now, of course, if you do one of these kinds of do-it-yourself systems where you're controlling all the data yourself, it's not an issue at all. I mean, I feel pretty secure with the system I've got. It would take a very determined person to break into my system. They have better luck kicking down my door and going in there and trying to steal the computer. But overall, I don't feel it's a serious crime or a serious issue that you have to be worried about as long as you maintain security patches and install firmware updates and use a good, strong password. My personal opinion. I mean, it's in the news a lot, but in general, the people who they say, oh, somebody was talking over my camera. Yeah, they had a very weak password. They use the same password on all their internet accounts. And then, of course, these guys basically start looking around and they find people's cameras they can log into because they didn't have good security practices. That's my advice. Strong password, two-factor authentication. Other questions? Yeah.
I'll keep it simple with, well, the first thing to do is just live next door to you.
Well, I will say this: my neighbor across the street who got her catalytic converter stolen, those guys the night they got caught actually stole it again from her house. Okay, this is what those two guys were doing. They were noting the address of the car of the home that they stole the catalytic converter from, and then they would wait 3 or 4 weeks because by then you've replaced the catalytic converter. They'd come back and they'd steal it again. There were people who were having their catalytic converter stolen 2 or 3 times in a row. It was the same guys. And so they literally were going from one address to the next. They came back to her address. They didn't see the car out front. They went through the alley and they found it behind their house because they knew she had a Prius with a brand new catalytic converter put in it, and they stole it a second time. So when the cops caught them later that night, they actually had her new catalytic converter in the back of their car. Okay, so anyway, let's see. What was the question? I guess I got.
Get the question.
Okay.
The question is, let's say I have just old Wyze cameras.
Yeah.
And you say you have 3 of them.
Okay.
Are they, and you're just using your own SD card, you're not doing a cloud thing. Do those individual, do they link together somehow? Like, they'll send a alert to your phone.
Yeah. Well, you'll have all the cameras.
Whenever you want.
Yeah.
What your dog is doing in the backyard.
Yeah.
You have to do that separately for each camera?
No. Actually, all the cameras can appear. For example, let me.
Here's my Wyze.
Yeah. Here's my Wyze here. So.
There's one going this way and one going that way.
Also,
Yeah.
they'll all show up in one,
And one, this is the app.
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to like log into a different one.
No.
No.
You have to click on like that one that shows going up and down.
Yeah. So, for example, here are all the Wyze cams here. Okay. So they're all actually on the same screen. I just go up and down and look at all the Wyze cams. They're all on the same screen here. So I can actually look all of them at once, very quickly, see what's going on around my house with the Wyze. Now these are only 4 of the cameras, Wyze cameras I'm using, okay? But most of my other cameras are much more sophisticated. But I like these little things because I like to show them to people. I tell them, hey, for $200 you can have this. That's all it takes is $200 and a few minutes of your time. And you can watch all 4 sides of your house continuously. That's why you want to get a Wyze camera. So easy to use and easy to set up. And also, if you pay their subscription fee for what they call the Cam Plus service, you can also watch those Wyze cams on your PC or your Mac through the web browser. So they do have an optional service which you may want to pay for. You don't need to, but it gives you some extra options, and that's one of them. Other questions? Yeah?
Do the memory cards automatically recycle?
Yes. Yep, so basically as the memory fills up, the oldest files get deleted automatically. So you always have a running set of files going back a certain number of days. So if you don't pull the video off quickly enough or you wait too long to check it, it'll have rolled off and disappeared. And of course, the bigger memory card, you'll have more video available to you. Yeah?
So you
we're talking about if you have your system on Wi-Fi and the Wi-Fi goes out, then you lose your,
For regular cloud cameras, that's true.
well, what happens if you have it all hooked up to like a dedicated computer and the power goes out?
Well, then you lose everything, which is why if you really are serious, which is what I am, I'm serious, I've got a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply. So if I lose power in my house, the camera system keeps running. So yeah, no, UPS, it's a battery backup you can plug a computer into. And you can buy those at any computer store for like $100. And they will keep your computer running for like, an hour or two. Now, obviously not forever, but if you have only a short-term power outage, your system will keep right on running. Now, if you're really serious and you're worried about a long-term power outage, then obviously a home generator is what you want to do. So if I were living in Florida, I'd definitely be thinking of something like that. Here in Tennessee, not so much. Usually most of our power outages are short-term. So the UPS works fine, in my opinion. Other questions? And I also want to emphasize, for example, for both the NVR and for WISE as well, for those cameras, if you lose the internet, your internet goes out, they'll still keep recording. And so later on when your internet comes back, for example, you've got Comcast and you lose the internet, which happens far too often, right? You can always come back later on and you can look on the SD card and it kept right on recording. So that's a nice thing about these cameras. They'll keep right on recording to the card itself until you get everything connected back up again and your internet comes back. Yeah?
On that car question, if you didn't have a backup, is it recorded in such a way that you would stop recording from that moment on, but you would still have what was previously?
Yeah, So basically, you have an interruption is what you'll have. So the camera, you lose power, it quits recording, but then later on, when it starts back up, it'll just pick up and record. But you'll obviously have a gap where there's nothing recorded.
But you're not losing what
No, you're normally not, unless you have such a severe power glitch that it actually damages your computer. But I've lost power before. You just have empty spot where nothing got recorded. Other questions? Yes.
Suggestion, one of my neighbors has a birdhouse out on a tree, so you don't have to have it at your house. You can wire it out to a birdhouse so it's close to the street.
People do that kind of thing. In fact, it's very easy to take Ethernet cable and trench it into the ground. You can get outdoor waterproof Ethernet cable and just use a trenching tool and just run cable out and trench it down about 6 or 8 inches and run it out to a camera near the roadway and actually get a really good image with a fairly low-cost camera if you want to do that. It's a little extra effort, but in my opinion, I think it's really worth it.
Or what about using a WISE camera? And I have one, and it's an extender. I have a signal extender, which goes outside.
Yes.
It's totally not wired at all, and it works very nicely.
Exactly. Well, now, are you doing battery backup on it?
It's just, there's a battery, and then I can look and see the battery works for
That's probably a WISE outdoor cam you're using. So it's not continuous time recording, it's motion recording.
Yes.
Okay? That's the drawback. I'm not a big fan of battery-powered cameras for exactly that reason. It can only do motion detection. I want wired cameras because that way I have the power to be constantly recording. I just cannot emphasize how the advantage I think that continuous time recording gives you for security situations. It tells you the whole story, whereas you're just getting a clip, just a piece of a clip. You can actually see what was going on. Before this person broke into my house, was he out front with friends? Did he drive by on a car? What was going on? And you see the whole story that way instead of seeing a 12-second clip. Yeah.
So it only records when they're in view.
Exactly. When the motion is in view and then it quits recording. But, I want to see what's going on all the time. So maybe this guy broke into my front porch, but outside my WISE cam pointing outside my window, I can see the car he drove up in, and I can see the people he was with, and I can see him hitting my neighbor's house before he came over to my house. All that is valuable information. I can see the kind of car he was in. That kind of stuff is stuff that helps the police find him.
Stamped in between the pause. If you walk up the alley, you capture.
Well, since it's continuous time recording, there's no pauses at all.
But if it's not, it only starts again.
It only starts again when he comes back around into view again.
How long the lapse was?
Well, yeah, you can actually read the timestamp. You can see how long the lapse was. So if you have timestamps in the corner, you can see when it happened. But like I said, sometimes it's the stuff that happened in between those motion events that can be very valuable. something may have happened that the camera didn't trigger the motion detection, but it turns out it's really valuable to know. So like I said, I'm a big fan of continuous time recording. It's cheap. It's easy to do. You can have a WiseCam outside of 4 windows, front, back, side of your house, and you can see what's going on around your house 24/7. I'm a big fan of that. I think I make a big difference.
If it's stored in the cloud, how long can you specify how long it's going to stay in the cloud?
I don't know how long the motion detection events stay in the cloud since I don't ever really use that for my WiseCams. Instead, I'll just put a memory card in there. Like, 32 gig will last 4 days on a WiseCam. 64 gig will last 8 days, okay? The 64 gig card is like $11. For a whole week of recording, you can see what happened around your house. You can go back a week and see what happened.
So then it just rolls over?
Yeah, and then just rolls over, exactly. So it's cheap and easy to do. I'm a big fan of that. I'm a real big advocate of doing that. And like I said, it's not that I have anything against Ring or Nest cameras. I mean, they're good cameras, but the business model of selling you the subscription and they handle the video, but it's only motion clips, it's not, in my opinion, a very effective model. I prefer continuous time recording, and Wyze gives you that option. So that's why one of the reasons why I really tell people I love those cameras, and I really advise you to consider buying one. This doesn't mean if you already got a Ring doorbell. I'm not saying go throw your Ring doorbell in the trash. You got it. You're happy with it. Keep it. But you want to add some more cameras. Go out and buy a couple of Wyze cameras and add those around your house. So they'll watch the rest of the thing. They'll get the bigger picture for you, and not just what happens when a person goes on your front porch. Okay? You can always supplement cameras. Other questions? Okay. Yes, we are about running out of time. We got 10 minutes left. Let us now go and have our drawing. Okay, everybody pull your tickets out. And I've got 2 WiseCam V3s, and I've also, along with the camera, I have a Pro Endurance 32 gig memory card. This memory card is intended for use in security cameras. This camera is waterproof. It takes you 5 minutes to install it. The power cable is flat. You can raise your window, run the cable under it, and close the window on it, and just mount this outside on your windowsill. It takes you a whole 5 minutes to set it up. Great little cameras. You're going to love it. All right, so we'll see who lucky winner number 1 is. Ticket number 212029. Congratulations. All right. Ticket number 212028. Congratulations. You're going to love these cameras, guys. You're going to love them. In fact, I predict that after you've tried them, you're going to go out and buy another one. All right? Because after all, it's only $50 for the camera plus the memory card. And, they're amazing cameras for what you can do for them. Okay. So I think that's going to wrap it up here. I'm sure everybody wants to get home before the storms, but if anybody wants to hang around and ask me some questions after the presentation, I'll be hanging around for a few minutes. I'll be more than glad to answer your questions. Yes, I will be posting this recording on the web. Yes. Okay? All right. Thank you.